वैभव सांग मला, आपण लाईव्ह केलो की.
हो. We can start now.
तू लाईव्ह दिसतेस.
सृष्टी माईक.
Yeah. A very good afternoon to all viewers. I, Ms. Srushti Rithe, co-leader of campaign and the host for today's live webinar, warmly welcomes you all. Rejuvenating Rashtra, a campaign organized by Social Welfare and Development Committee VIT Pune to discuss various socio-economic issues and unearth different approaches to overcome these challenges. There are times when you wonder how much you know about this virus and its impact on global society as well as economy. This virus has reshaped our way of living on various fronts, causing significant changes in social and economic behavior. COVID-19 is so far the worst crisis in the decade. In short, the gist of today's discussion would be how we can pave a path to overcome global economic crisis and moreover highlighting Indian economy is impacted by coronavirus and what's the best way to be able to deal with economic challenges going across now. So to get the sense of how badly the Indian economy is affected to pandemic, I'm extremely delighted to have Mr. Praveen Pardeshi, sir, our esteemed guest and brilliant bureaucrat. On behalf of SWND, I welcome you, sir.
Thank you.
With close to 30 years of experience in the Indian administrative services, he has worked with various departments and government bodies, from forest to finance, from environment to urban development, holding offices for various administrative posts, including municipal commissioner, secretary to chief minister, principal secretary, etc. So far in Praveen sir's case, it has always been like as if disaster always preferred to chase Praveen sir. Taking from the current pandemic situation when Mumbai and especially Dharavi was badly affected due to COVID-19, Praveen sir controlled the situation in hard times being former BMC chief. Before that, serving for 7 years of tenure as senior leadership position in the United Nations, he was about to return to his homeland and tsunami devastated many countries. Then he was appointed as Senior Coordinator of UNISDR for Disaster Mitigation and Recovery Program. He led the UNDP Kutch Earthquake Rehabilitation Program. I know these words are not enough to introduce you, sir, and your immense contribution in developing the state. With your permission, and without any further delay, let's start our today's webinar live and exclusive with one of the brilliant bureaucrats in India, Mr. Praveen Pardeshi, sir. I think we want to know how big are these economic crises, sir? What should India be worried about and how seriously it should be taken really from the economic point of view?
So first, let me thank you for having organized this excellent webinar. And of course, this topic is a very big fallout of the COVID crisis, which is a global pandemic today. I will start by not camouflaging or hiding. Yes, it's a very big economic crisis. And we should understand that the economic crisis is because of the lockdown. The demand for goods and services has completely disappeared. And that is the main reason why the economies have going into recession. So this is a new type of a crisis wherein the recession which happened during the Great Depression when Keynesian economics came into being, that the demand had gone out, and therefore whatever you do, we had excess capacity, and yet the economy was having low employment and low incomes. So that is exactly what has happened. And in India, it is even bigger because of the large part of our economy is informal economy, where people don't have permanent jobs. So in this situation, the informal jobs are lost and they are not easy to be regained, because the demand for informal services, whether it is vegetable vendors, repair mechanics, transporters, people who work on restaurants, this demand disappears, and because of the disappearance of this demand, the economy goes down. So yes, the economic crisis is big, and as you rightly pointed out, the even when India grows at a small rate, we call it recession. But if we grow only above 6%, we call it proper growth. Then if we grow at 3-4%, but now we are saying that we are contracting. This is the first time when both exports and the overall GDP is contracting. So it's a big economic crisis, I would say.
So you say that in your view, the crises are deeper than the government are telling us right now?
No, the government is also recognizing the crisis and is doing its best in many respects. For example, it is trying to work on the whole. Just give me a few minutes. I'll just try to get this.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So I just try to get that settled. Sound was interfering. Can some other guests also join in?
Yeah, if you send them the Google Meet link, then they
I've given
can.
them, but you need to let them in. So there are some others who
Okay,
I sent you on a WhatsApp message.
Okay, I'll admit them. Just
Okay.
send them the link.
Yeah, perfect. We can go on to our next question.
Okay, so as you now said, the Indian economy is contracted, and of course, according to the report by the World Bank now in June, Indian economy has contracted to 3.2% in FY21. What exactly are the right policies you think, Praveen sir, needed for the revival, and where would this process of economic revival start? What can monetary policy and fiscal policy are needed to bring to revive the Indian economy?
So you know that the fiscal policy we deal with the taxation policy and the expenditure in the budget. How the government raises its revenue through taxes and how it spends it through the budget. So this is the fiscal policy, and monetary policy is how much money supply that we pump into the economy. The Reserve Bank of India does that, and what is the rate of interest. So these are the two elements of the monetary policy. Now to start with, let's look at the problem in an economic way, economic theoretical way. So the crisis is because of the demand having fallen because of the lockdown. So we have to revive the demand. If you have to revive the demand, we have to have an expansionary fiscal policy. But we cannot have an expansionary fiscal policy too much because it can lead to inflation. So my personal understanding of this is that we should reduce GST rates across all commodities. So that will reduce the burden on the consumer, reduce prices, and will enable the consumers to demand more. But at the same time, this will create a deficit in the budget because the revenues of the government will fall down. This reduced expenditure, this reduced revenue should be made up by doing deficit financing and having an expansionary monetary policy, having more money in the economy through the RBI, which can be spent only by the government on infrastructure. So whether it is stalled road projects, railway projects, ports, etc. So having this extra money, which is funded from deficit financing, can go for expanding the infrastructure, and the rates of interest will have to be kept low. This will remain low because once you put in a lot of money in the economy through the increasing the money supply, we can have reduced interest rates. And if we also have reduced tax rates through the GST cut down, then you can have an expansionary fiscal and monetary policy. Now, people will think that this will lead to inflation. I have a contrary view. It will not lead to inflation in the short term because we have surplus capacity across all sectors today. So because of if you go for the automobile industry, the demand has come down. If you go to the housing industry, there are so many houses which are constructed, which are lying idle. If you go into the various manufacturing sectors, everywhere there is idle capacity. Now there is idle capacity because people are having low incomes, are not able to purchase these goods. So I have suggested a 2-point approach: reduced GST rates to increase the demand by reducing prices of goods, and increased money supply, that is an expansionary monetary policy with low rates of interest, so that there is a huge amount of money available. To prevent it from being inflationary, we don't want the prices to go up and reduce the incomes, real incomes of poor people. We need to have a budget of the government which is focused only on expenditure on the infrastructure. So what are the infrastructure? For example, in Maharashtra, there are more than 80,000 crores of incomplete irrigation projects. There are huge number of national highway projects which are not complete. There are ports, airports, railway lines which are incomplete. So this expansionary monetary policy can be used to fund the infrastructure expenditure of the economy, and this will help the economy to come out of the current recession.
Okay, so we have now talked about the taxation and the infrastructure. Now let's move on to the manufacturing industry. The ongoing lockdown has put a lot of strain on the manufacturing industry as well, which contribute almost 20% of GDP at least. According to you, Praveen sir, how should we revive the manufacturing sector of India, and how it will help to rise in the economy? How it will help to overcome the economic crisis in India?
So, of course, I gave you my broad solution of an expansionary fiscal and monetary policy is very much needed because we have surplus capacity even in the manufacturing sector. So that is point one. But we need to be very specific on this. First, I think that we can look at the manufacturing sector by sector. Though IT sector is a service sector, but I think IT sector is the backbone of the industry 4.0. So now we are moving from the older industries to Internet of Things, and a lot of our manufacturing is moving into Industry 4.0. So this Industry 4.0 requires very much IT-enabled service provision. Now that is the sector that we need to enhance, both by skilling and providing home-based facilities. As you might have noticed that a lot of the IT towers are now going empty, as the formerly IT the IT industry used to have a lot of people working from the sites like the IT towers. Now they have been made to work from home. So these IT service towers are now no longer being fully employed in that respect. But if we can change the way we are doing business by doing from home, and same can be done from a lot of the manufacturing, then we can have a revival of the manufacturing. This will only happen if we are having an expansionary fiscal and monetary policy to step up the demand.
As you now said, Praveen sir, about the business and work from home, about the IT industries, but there is also business have voluntarily closed to protect their employees and the public as a whole. That's why they were doing the work from home system and they implemented this. These precedented challenges are having economic ripple effect across the country. What's your perspective behind the India achieving full employment and how it can be done?
So on that, let me go to a small presentation, which I'll put up on, basically based on the am I able to share the screen now?
But your screen is not visible because you have to click on the present now option, which is at the taskbar.
Yeah, I did that. 1 minute.
Yeah.
And now I can put it on.
It will take time to share the screen. Just a minute or two, couple of minutes.
Share करते हैं. Can you see it now?
Yes, it's loading. Yeah, we can see it now.
So I'll just start with Mumbai because Mumbai is a typical example of a mega city. Now you'll see from Mumbai that a major crisis of any big city is the slums. In a city like Mumbai, which has an area of 330 square kilometers, only 142 square kilometers is the developable area. That is 30%. The balance 70% is not non-developable. Out of 475, 70% is non-developable. It is in the form of these forests, creeks, mangroves, etc. And only 142 square kilometers is developable. Because of this, as Mumbai provides jobs to so many people, a lot of people come in, but they don't get housing. So if you'll see in pockets close to the green areas, more than 50% of the people live in slums. This dark brown is the percentage of people living in slums in these ward areas. So you rightly mentioned that Dharavi was one of the big problem areas when COVID broke out there because of the dense congestion out there. So
Yes.
We followed a strategy of tracing all the contacts. Then all the high risk contacts were of the people who were positive. We had aggressive testing, and anybody who was in contact with them, we traced them. Then we put them in dedicated healthcare centers where they could be institutionally quarantined so that they don't come into contact with others. Entire slum pockets were completely sealed off. They were called managed by containment officers, so nobody could go in or out, and food packets, groceries were supplied at the border, and even community toilets, etc., were being cleaned on a regular basis because they were common toilets. But if you will see, 70% of Mumbai and 50 to 60% of large cities live in slums. Now, this is a major problem in relation to spread of any disease like COVID. But it's also a big opportunity for economic revival, because in most countries like US or in Western Europe, almost all the necessities of life are already given. So to revive the economy, there aren't really many basic needs which need to be pumped up. But in a city like Mumbai, where 65 to 70% people are living in slums, starting a massive reconstruction in the slum areas so that the housing industry can be revived is a very big boost to the economy. And this can drive the manufacturing sector ahead, because it is cement, steel, employment, all of these can be pushed ahead, and providing a very basic need which will enable such a city not to be hit by COVID again. If all the people living in slums have safe housing with proper ventilation, proper common areas, the ability of viruses like the COVID-19 to spread rapidly would be deterred. So my first thing in this is that COVID is a very big opportunity for cities to be transformed. To transform these cities, we need to look at the current problems. The biggest current problems is slums, and we need to have a vision of making whole of the the entire cities of India to be slum free by rehousing all the people living in slums into proper safe housing. This requires two things. One is public investment. So I had mentioned about deficit financing and putting money under stressed projects. Most of the slum redevelopment projects are under stressed financial conditions. So by having an easy money policy, we can pump in money to the housing projects, number one. And secondly, we need to relax the rules. We can provide additional FSI, we can make online permissions for construction much easier, and we can make some flexible rules with regard to road sizes, the amount of FSI that can be loaded. All of these things can be made easy only for slums, so that the present bad conditions in which people are living, which are very easy for the COVID and other viruses to spread, can be countered. So I will just stop out here regarding this. I have some more points to speak, but I will stop sharing the screen for the time being, and we can go on to your next question.
I have seen that when you were a former BMC chief, you have that very close view, close perspective, how Dharavi turned into a successful model now and how it overcome COVID-19, we may say. And that is the unique model to the whole world right now. And I was actually watching a video on YouTube yesterday, and there it was a doctor who mentioned your name, that you took the sustainable development plan of converting NESCO to the 3,000 bed COVID treatment hospital. So what could you say about it, and what made you take that decision? You also worked in United Nations, so what is it about?
So initially we were all very scared when COVID started entering into slum areas, because we know that the density of population is so great that if one or two people are positive, they will spread it to literally lakhs. There are more than 8 to 10 lakh people living in Dharavi in such a small area. So we followed up a strategy of aggressive testing. We increased the RT-PCR tests. We provided fewer clinics. Within the fewer clinics, we could go from the house to house. Anybody having fever, they could be tested for COVID. And moment somebody is positive, find out those whom they are in contact with, and then put them in isolation ward. So what you talked about, the NESCO Jumbo Center, all of these centers were basically exhibition grounds or certain other large halls. Sometimes there were stadiums. And here we provided beds with oxygen where people with mild symptoms of COVID could be placed, because the hospitals, we were running out of space out there. From the United Nations point of view, this was declared by the World Health Organization as a global pandemic. So to ensure that the global pandemic doesn't spread from country to country, they were giving out good practices. One of the good practices from South Korea, as opposed to Italy, was that South Korea took testing to a new level where anybody could get tested, and moment they are positive, they could be isolated so that they don't spread it to others. While in a country like Italy, all the testing was done at hospitals. So the people were going to the hospitals, and doctors and nurses got infected, and hospitals started shutting down. So this was a practice which we learned in Mumbai, and we started sending for home collection, swab collection through telephone contacts, which is also being followed in UK. So what the United Nations helps us to do is it helps us to acquire good practices from across the countries and adopt it to our needs.
Indeed, that was a very difficult and difficult job to do. Before moving ahead, sir, I have a short and very true story to tell all the audience, all the viewers who have joined us live and who are watching us live now. It was 30th of September 1993 at 4 a.m. in the morning. The whole country was sleeping, and suddenly Western India hit by 6.2 moment of earthquake, and especially Latur district was in great danger. Around 10,000 lives got buried in debris and 30,000 people were injured. Transmission lines of Latur collapsed, mobile networks disrupted, roads suddenly vanished. The whole district was in shock, and nobody knew what to do, and nobody had any idea how to deal with the situation. Apparently, now the responsibility of people in lands come to the district administrator, that is collector. The chief minister of Maharashtra then, Mr. Sharad Pawar sir, rushed to the place in few days, and then he found one man was sleeping on the bullock cart. He acquired the people around and he asked that who's this man, and he got to know that he was none other than the district collector, Mr. Praveen Pardeshi sir. He is the man who has joined with us today, works with passion, sentiment, and has capacity to work 24/7. As you were the collector of Latur, sir, so sir, can you please explain us in brief how the collector must react to this sudden situation or tragedy? We can say what steps you have taken at that time.
So the Latur earthquake was one of the first major earthquakes to happen in the sub-peninsular India. So far, the earthquakes used to be always known in the Himalayan region, where the subcontinental plate of India was clashing with the main Asian landmass plate, and that is where the Himalayas come up. So that was the seismic zone. So we never thought that the Deccan was part of the seismic zone. But there were a few minor earthquakes, and then that's called a swarm, and then this major earthquake of 6.4 on the Richter scale took place. Now, immediately when the earthquake took place, we realized that we had to first look at rescue operations. There were people who were trapped under the collapsed houses. So, of course, army was also called in, local volunteers were called in, and slowly we ensured that anybody trapped under the debris, etc., were saved. Nowadays, we have very good rapid response teams, but in those days, this was not heard, and therefore, police, SRPF, and the army were the ones which were helping us. So that was the first thing. After relief, we realized that the most important thing next to do is to look after the immediate needs of the people who had survived the earthquake. So more than 30 villages were totally flattened, and more than 100 villages were partially damaged. So these people had lost their food supplies under the debris. There was no water. So providing immediate relief was the second task after rescue. Immediate relief meant that people didn't even have anything to cook. So we were providing cooked food to them. Of course, our tehsildars, our supply departments, they were helpful. But the great thing about this earthquake, in the tragedy of the earthquake, was the response of the people. From Gujarat to Mumbai to Pune, across India, people rushed to help. Now we had to make a system to tell them to help exactly what was needed. So we made the list of villages with the number of families based on their ration cards, found out how many families needed, how much cooked food per day in which all villages, and then we were directing these relief humanitarian agencies so that cooked food could go there. But we realized in 10-15 days that just providing cooked food make people dependent. So we needed to get them people to become self-reliant. Even in an earthquake, the best way to get out of a natural disaster is when you start doing things on your own and becoming self-reliant. So that helps the mental shock, the loss and grief for you to come out of that. So we then moved over from cooked food to giving dry rations to everybody, free rations, so that they could, set up their own homes. But for dry rations, we found there are no homes. So we took up what we call transit camps. These were made of GI sheets, ballis, with a plinth area and small toilets provided. So most of the villages were located in GI sheet transit camps, which we put up because it had started raining in September and October in Latur. So these transit camps were put up, and Public Works Department, Irrigation Department, all the construction agencies were lined up to create these transit camps. Once we had the transit camps, then we started providing them relief in terms of dry rations, clothes, etc. in that. So this was the relief stage. But as you mentioned, our Chief Minister, at the very early time, he was also focused on long-term rehabilitation. So he said that relief is okay, but we need to build them back permanent homes. Then we talked with the World Bank team, with the global experts. We realized that the earthquake is a big opportunity to build back better. That is, if an earthquake comes again, the houses should not fall, because earthquake we can't stop. We don't know what forces of energy which move the tectonic plates, the fault lines in the geology of the earth which cause earthquakes. That we cannot prevent. But what we can prevent is the losses occurring from the earthquake. So for that, what we started doing, we went through a lot of engineering workshops where we found out that there is a whole branch called seismic engineering, where houses can be built to withstand certain levels of earthquake. Now, so this was classified in zone 4, which is the highest risk. So these houses could be built with 3 bands to make them monolithic, which could withstand an earthquake up to 6.5 to 7 on the Richter scale. So once these designs were approved as being seismically safe, then we got people like Anand Swarup Arya, Laurie Baker, some of the leading experts across the country and the world to help us to design the earthquake-safe houses. Once these houses had been designed, then we had the issue about where to build them. Many people were not willing to go back to the old sites. So, but on the other hand, the earthquake can come to any spot. So the site is not safe or unsafe. What is safe or unsafe is the house. House has to be made earthquake safe. So anyway, deferring to people's requests, we decided to move some of the people from the valley areas where there was a lot of black cotton soil and which was close to the Terna river, which was close to a lineament or a fault line, to slightly higher elevations up the valley, where the soil was more harder soil, murum soil, and the sites were relocated accordingly. And then we started the reconstruction there. The reconstruction was done in 2 parts. Part 1 was done through support of various donor agencies like Mahada, the various charity organizations also helped in, and the government, by taking the help of the World Bank, also constructed many of these houses. Now, these were roughly about 30,000 houses in the isoseismal zone 1, that is the highest intensity of damage. Near the epicenter of the earthquake. But outside the epicenter, the houses were partially damaged, and these houses were huge. There were 2 lakh such houses. Fully collapsed houses were only 30,000, but more than 2 lakh houses were partially damaged. And these people were also, out of fear of recurring tremors, staying outside the houses. So how do we take care of that problem? Then we realized that we can't rebuild all the houses afresh. So we leverage the energy of the people themselves. You know, my father used to be with me at that time. He's here just now listening to this talk. So he kept telling us that we should not use contractors to build the houses. We should ask the people to build themselves the houses, but we should give them proper training and provide the correct technology. So we started the self-owner-driven construction, which is a unique program where we gave money in 3 installments to the house owners, gave them the design. We would give them the second installment if they had used the first installment to build the plinth correctly. The plinth needed to have a steel and concrete band at the base. If they did that, then they would get the second installment to build the wall. In the wall, they needed to provide a lintel band which went all around the 4 walls of the house. If they did that correctly, they got the third installment. And this way, they were able to build more than 2 lakh houses by the family who owned those houses with their own efforts. And this was a very big achievement because we didn't then involve outside contractors. There was no contractors commission. And as the house owner was himself supervising the house, it led to very high quality construction. So these are some of the lessons. There are many issues concerning children who had lost both their parents. We took a lot of efforts to ensure that their properties were not grabbed by some of the closer relatives by having a court of wards, and their property was kept permanently in their names till they became 21 years old. The cash compensation was huge for the parents, but sometimes it happened that some relatives would come and take the small children and then use up. So that was also kept in a separate account, and we were monitoring this. We got various NGOs to look after these children. Sometimes the relatives who were closer to the children, like from their maternal side, but the legal side was coming on the parent side. So we would look at what the child wanted and then try to give the custody to that person. Especially for the girl children, we were very careful because sometimes the girl children were without their parents would be just used for doing domestic chores and not given education. So all of these things we kept a taboo on so that these children then later on in life, over 15-20 years, many of these children came and met me. Some of them have got jobs in Pune Municipal Corporation, in Pimpri Chinchwad, and they still come and meet me because once they had their land safely kept in their name, the amount of compensation government had given them, that also. We also got SOS Balgram village done for such people. So these are some of the interesting things that I thought I could.
You and your team has indeed did a very commendable job, and a big applause to the work you do. We received a question from the audience right now.
Yes, so I see a question from Ishan Girgaonkar. Should I answer that?
Yeah. Due to Corona, I'll just read it out to the people who can't just read it. Due to the Corona pandemic, we see positive effect on environment. Is there possibilities of utilization of renewable source of energy for industrial purposes?
So yes, one of the things about the coronavirus is because of the shutdown of the transportation sector, CO2 emissions have come down. If CO2 emissions have come down, skies have become clearer. The diseases related to chronic lung diseases have come down. All of that has happened. But then once the economy restarts, again this will be wiped out. So yes, it's a good chance to switch the urban public transport from diesel and petrol to solar and electric vehicles, which can then be carbon neutral if they are fueled through solar energy. So this is one very big opportunity to do that. I must tell you, Mumbai is also transferring its best fleet to electrical buses to make it cleaner. Also, metro is a clean source of transport if it can be electric metro, which is fueled by solar energy, not by coal energy. I think here's the second question. Also throw light on FDI shrinkage, the opportunity for Indian companies to get more FDI after world apathy towards China. So this is not so easy because the world entire manufacturing chain is tied up with China's supply lines. And even if the companies want to switch out of China, it's not easy because both the cost and the skill sector. China is not just low cost input manufacturing, but they also have very high skilled manpower at very reasonable wages. So for India to match that, we need to step up our infrastructure like roads, electricity, power, ports capacity. So this we need to do because that will reduce the cost of production. And secondly, we also need to provide skilling to our workers so that they can provide the same quality which in China they do. For that, we need to do some reforms also in the labor laws, which ensures that the unnecessary pressure which is sometimes exercised from various political labor unions can be made more reasonable so that the interest of the workers and interest of the production both are kept in mind. Yes, Srishti?
There is one more question which is asked. I'll just read it out. A lot of employees working in various companies, factories, offices are now detected positive. In such cases, should this be temporarily closed or should continue operating with precautions?
Factories should not be shut at all. They should continue to operate with precautions because as you might be seeing that more than 99% of the people who are affected can come out of it safely. The real mortality rate is about 1%. Of course, we have to be very careful about that 1%. But 80% people are even asymptomatic. They don't have any symptoms or very mild symptoms. So these people, once you detect a symptom, then such people can be put in quarantine, while the people without any symptoms can come to work with masks and social distancing practice so that the production continues while people are kept safe. People with comorbidities like diabetes, heart ailments, and above 50, they should only work from home. They should not come to the work environment.
Now, talking about the coronavirus vaccines, various pharmaceutical companies all over the world are counting on India to be the biggest manufacturer of the vaccine once it comes out. Do you think that India can lead the world in terms of vaccine manufacturing in coming days?
Well, Serum Institute of Pune is very much poised to do that. They have collaborated with Oxford, and I am very hopeful that their vaccine will succeed and will put India in as one of the leading vaccine manufacturers. I know Mr. Adar Poonawalla and their company, they are very dedicated. They are collaborating with Oxford, where these human trials have just commenced, and we hope that they succeed. But there are various other vaccines which are also being tried in US, in China, in Russia, in Germany. So all of them are making huge efforts because the scale of crisis is so big for the world that the bigger the crisis, the bigger the human response always is. So I hope that even if the Oxford vaccine doesn't succeed, some other vaccines will succeed, and maybe by February of next year, the world will have a COVID vaccine.
On the same line, if India gets access to vaccines in an amount to vaccinate a significant portion of the population, so what would be the line of action and logistical planning so that vaccine is distributed more efficiently?
So you must be knowing that India has a very good primary health system where 100% vaccination against polio, against smallpox, against measles, against BCG is done through the Anganwadi, through the various health workers, community health workers, which are there, ASHA workers, which are there in every village. So the same primary healthcare manpower, which goes down to each and every village, can be used to ensure that the vaccine is spread to almost all the people who need it. Which primarily we can start with people above 50 years, people with comorbidities, so that they are the first to be vaccinated, and then we can spread it to the others.
There is one more question we received from the audience, and he is asking, marching towards Atmanirbhar Bharat, as a student, what steps we should take from now onwards to become job giver rather than seeker?
So small enterprises, there is a huge government program to provide capital interest subvention to small scale enterprises, and these small scale enterprises can become job givers, not job requirers. So that's one thing. We can use these schemes. These enterprises have to be demand based. So some of the new areas of demand are, of course, pharmaceutical industries, the healthcare industry, the provisioning of IT services. For example, during the Mumbai lockdown, a lot of the grocery stores were closed, but Zomato, Swiggy, all of these online suppliers could provide great relief to the housing society.
Okay, so now overall, how you analyze the current pandemic situation and what could be the opportunities and challenges lying ahead of us?
I think that we are now at the middle of the pandemic. We are not at the beginning, neither are we at the end. We are in the middle. So the war and the battle is still on. The efforts of all the states is at a very high level. I guess it's a 4 or 5 step strategy: aggressive testing, tracing the contacts, isolating them, in quarantining them either at home or in institutional centers, stepping up the hospital's bed capacity to treat COVID patients through providing oxygen, ensuring that there is sufficient medicines which are life-saving, like the remdesivir, itolizumab, tocilizumab. These are the 3 wonder drugs which have been discovered by Cipla, by Biocon, which provide the safety for people affected by COVID through, there is something called cytokine storm, which happens in the lungs when the cells fail through the attack of this virus. This remdesivir is a wonder drug which is helping to prevent that failure of the at the cellular level, and therefore save lives. So talking of these medicines is needed.
Okay. Finally, just one more questions I have is which few of our audience member will be very much interested in considering your administrative service background. What was your inspiration behind joining IAS and how did you achieve it? What does one need to be an IAS? What advice you would like to give the IAS aspirants or civil services aspirants?
No, that's so of course hard work and dedication and passion, all of them. It's very important that those who want to join the IAS are wanting to join the IAS because they want to serve the country, and not because it's a big job, it's a job which gives power and fame, because then you may not succeed. If you put your aim to serve this country, to achieve great things for India, for the districts that you're serving, then that passion can convert into devotion, and this type of answers you can write in your questions can be reflected and assessed by the examiners, which will reflect this passion, and therefore you will get selected. So that's my just general overview. So basic point being, go for IAS if you really want to be in the IAS to serve the country, not because it's a powerful position or it's a famous position or whatever. That's point one. Once you have decided and you also feel the inner need to serve this country through these civil services, then you look at the syllabus. The syllabus consists of a general essay where you need to know everything about everything. So you need to know the general history of India, you need to know the general uh, politics of the world, you need to know the general science, physics, chemistry, biology, you need to know the new scientific developments, you need to know current affairs. So general essay and general ethics essay, these two are very important where they test your general knowledge, general understanding of all the global and national issues through long essays. And you need to practice, look at the old essays which have come in the old questions and practice these answers and discuss with friends again and again. So that's point one. Point number two is you should also look at your one which is very close to your heart. So if you are suppose graduated, let's say in engineering, civil engineering, so civil engineering could be that subject. It could be physics, it could be maths. So one subject which you have selected, you look at question papers of these subject in the last 5-6 years and practice writing the answers of that, reading from textbooks and preparing short notes to answer these questions. So this will help you. Then you need to also prepare for the interview. In the interview, whatever are your special interests, like I had interest in wildlife, so I mentioned about wildlife. They asked me about golden eagle, and then I had gone to Nagaland where my father was serving. So they asked me how many Naga tribes there are, and then I could answer many of them. So whatever things you have truthfully done and you have enjoyed doing, you mention them in your biodata so they can ask questions from that for you. So this way you can prepare for the IAS. Sincere work, dedication, and efforts does pay, but don't try to go for the IAS if you are not interested in serving the country, because then there are many other professions where you can do excellent work in area of your interest.
Yes, that's true. I think we have learned a lot in this 1 hour rather than just going to the internet and reading big articles. I leave it over here and today talking live and exclusive with the dynamic person, Mr. Praveen sir. I guess he has given a lot of sustainable solution to rejuvenation for the Rashtra. Thank you for joining and taking time out of your busy schedule and talking with us today, sir.
Thank you. Thank
Yes.
you.
I also thank all the viewers who were listening very keenly and joined and watched our live session.
Thank you, Srishti. You did a very good job. You conducted the meeting very well. I enjoyed being with all of you youngsters. Thank you.
Thank you. Viewers who were listening very keenly and joined and watched our live. Thank you.
स्टॉप करा स्ट्रीम आता.
झाली का stop?